Thank you, Mr. Agnew.
Agnew e poi Vice...
Then Vice President Siekierski.
Chairman, Commissioner, I wonder if you'd mind specifically mentioning horse meat. You didn't in your opening remarks, despite the fact you talked about traceability, quality and sustainability. We in Britain feel very, very badly let down by EU regulation on the traceability and provenance of food. I'm quite certain we could do it far better ourselves. I'm also worried to hear Martin Häusling and Mark Tarabella talking about commodity futures trading. This is essential. This has stood the test of time. I both sell materials on the futures market and buy materials on the futures market. It works. It really does work. Why has the market speculated? Because people think there's going to be a shortage, and there is no better stimulus to plant more when you know you're going to get a good price for it. It really does help. And I dread the fact that the EU is going to start throwing its weight around here. These regulate themselves. Yes, they've made mistakes. Yes, they overreach. But people use them. Their speculators use them, but so do end users and so do producers. Look at potato futures. That was over-speculated and that stopped. This is working. Let's not interfere with it. And I'm, of course, particularly worried that these solutions are going to be rather like the solutions we've seen in Cyprus recently, where the solution to save the euro is to raid the bank accounts of individual depositors. Quite extraordinary. Thank you.
Mr. Agnew and Mrs. Jägler talked about traceability. Now, I myself used the term traceability earlier. And this makes me think of a comment that I made. I think it was in Strasbourg at one of the my first hearings as Commissioner for the Internal Market. It was Mrs. Lulling who had asked me the question. She asked me a question about wine.
Et je m'étais permis de...
And Mrs. Lulling, you will remember that I made the comparison between the wine products and financial products and traceability. And I was just starting. I wasn't officially commissioner at that point. And I really do think that there are comparisons that can be drawn. We have to have traceability for all of the financial products. And I told you of the tools that we're using to achieve traceability. We need to shed light on people who don't really like being in the spotlight. And that is what we are doing with the EMIR regulation on derivatives. We're going to introduce considerable changes. And as I said, the US is doing a similar thing. But this is not the same thing for farmers or wine growers. They're not afraid of traceability. And so, Mrs. Jägler, Mr. Agnew, if we talk about the recent crisis, which is a crisis which is clearly a case of fraud on the type of product being sold, horse meat or beef meat, I think we need to be intransigent with people who are manipulating things in such a way. And I think we really need to follow through entirely with traceability. This is something that we owe to consumers, exactly as we do when we're talking about financial products. And I don't think that is farmers who will object. We need to know all of this information in terms of food, because that's vital, but we also need to know this for financial products. We need to know who is buying what and how. And so I will continue to fight for traceability. Now, Mr. Agnew, I didn't mention Cyprus, something that you mentioned earlier, but just to say that we continue to work together with the Cyprus authorities prior to the vote tomorrow on this special exceptional assistance on the question of savings and the distinction that has to be made to protect small depositors. That's all I would like to say on that point. That is the position that I'm adopting as a Commissioner. Mr. Tarabella. Mr. Lyon or Mr. Capello Santos mentioned the fact that there is a link with short-term volatility and the price of energy and the impact of climate change. Yes, there is a direct and immediate consequence, and this is exacerbated by markets and also by a number of speculators. And in the case that you were mentioning earlier, Mrs. Jägle or Mr. Agnew, on horse meat and beef meat, if we look at the process, and possibly we haven't got the full detail yet, it is a process which led to fraud, and there's a great deal of speculation, and this shows the impact that financial transactions relating to commodities have an impact. And so we need your input so that we can come up with the texts like EMIR, which have recently been adopted, or the one that will be coming shortly on market abuse, or MiFID. It is important that we have the tools that we need to ensure traceability, responsibility, and transparency for all of the transactions on the financial market for agricultural products. So thank you very much. And I would be very happy to come back, perhaps in a few months' time, to talk about this further, perhaps once we have all of the texts adopted and implemented.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Mr. Barnier.